Microsoft has quietly turned a routine Windows update into a serious risk event. Across forums, support channels, and internal reports, Windows 11 users are discovering that the 25H2 update, released on September 30th, 2025, is doing far more than refreshing their systems. Cameras stop working, microphones disappear, location hardware vanishes completely, not because of drivers, but because the system no longer recognizes the hardware at a foundational level. Rolling back Windows does not fix it. Resetting the operating system does not help. In many cases, the damage is permanent. This is not a temporary bug or a compatibility issue. Security researchers and hardware vendors have documented incidents where solid-state drives drop offline during active use, memory modules fail, and boot drives corrupt beyond recovery. Some affected machines cannot be restored even with Microsoft's own recovery tools. Once the update completes, the hardware is simply gone. The scale of the problem makes this deeply concerning. More than 400 million devices currently run Windows 11, and Microsoft has confirmed that the 25H2 update is being pushed automatically to many systems, without a clear option to decline. For some users, a standard overnight restart has been enough to turn expensive, high-end machines into unusable hardware. What is emerging is a troubling picture of quality control failures inside Microsoft's 2025 update pipeline, failures that raise serious doubts about whether Windows updates can still be trusted. When Microsoft announced Windows 11 version 25H2 in the summer of 2025, the messaging was confident. It was positioned as the annual feature update, promising stronger security, smoother performance, and support for next-generation hardware. The rollout began through Windows Update on September 30th, targeting all eligible systems. For users on version 24H2, Microsoft described the update as largely the same platform, unlocked through a small enablement package. On paper, the changes sounded safe and measured. Microsoft highlighted kernel components rewritten in the Rust programming language to improve memory safety, new administrator protection features designed to limit malware privileges, and support for Wi-Fi 7 networking. Installation was meant to happen quietly in the background and complete during a scheduled restart with minimal disruption. That was the promise. What followed for many users has been far more destructive. The reality that emerged within days told a dramatically different story. On October 26, 2025, an MSI Vector GP 76 laptop user reported to Microsoft's forums that after updating to 25H2, the system completely deleted hardware relating to camera, microphone, and location services. This was not a driver issue. The hardware was gone at a foundational level, vanished from Device Manager, invisible to BIOS, and unrecoverable even after rolling back Windows. The user had previously blocked these services through Windows privacy settings, and somehow, 25H2 interpreted this as permission to permanently remove the hardware itself. When attempting to access app permissions, the Settings app would crash immediately because it was referencing hardware that no longer existed. Downloading manufacturer drivers made no difference because there was no hardware for drivers to communicate with. Separate reports surfaced about 25H2 permanently damaging RAM modules on systems using AMD X3D processors. Users described immediate memory errors, unexpected reboots, and progressive system instability after installing 25H2 on AMD platforms. And the pattern suggested incorrect software instructions were affecting the serial presence detect programmable memory, causing physical damage through overheating or voltage irregularities. This represented a fundamental violation of the boundary between software and hardware, where an operating system update was reaching beyond its intended scope and destroying physical components. The SSD failures added another dimension to the crisis. Testing conducted in August 2025 on Windows 11 systems running 24H2 and 25H2, Codebase found that during heavy file operations, particularly large sequential writes exceeding 50 gigabytes, solid-state drives would simply disappear from the operating system. Out of 21 drives tested, 12 became temporarily inaccessible, requiring a reboot to restore functionality. One Western Digital SA 512 terabyte drive could not be recovered even after a restart, representing permanent data loss. Users reported real-world scenarios where updating large games like Cyberpunk 2077 or Honkai Star Rail would cause primary storage drives to vanish mid-operation, leaving systems unable to boot and files corrupted beyond recovery. Affected drives included mainstream consumer SSDs from Western Digital, SanDisk, and models using Phison controllers, indicating the problem was not limited to obscure or budget hardware. While Microsoft and manufacturers like Phison conducted extensive testing and officially stated they could not reproduce a direct causal link, the temporal correlation and volume of user reports suggested something in the Windows 11 update chain was triggering latent firmware vulnerabilities or edge cases in storage controller behavior. The boot drive corruption epidemic represented perhaps the most devastating category of failures. Users running Windows 25 H2, build 26200.6584, reported that during automatic updates, their systems would restart and immediately display unmountable boot volume blue screen errors alongside BLDMGR. SYS stop codes. The computers would enter endless automatic repair cycles, briefly allowing access for a few minutes before crashing again, making it impossible to retrieve data or apply fixes. One user described returning home to find their spouse's computer had automatically installed a Windows update during the day and was now completely non-functional, trapped in a boot failure loop with no clear path to recovery. Attempts to use the Go Back feature to uninstall the update would fail midway through the process. The Reinstall Now option would fail. System restore points would stop executing partway through. Users were left with broken systems, and no Microsoft-provided solution that actually worked. Even more extreme reports documented laptops that would not boot into BIOS after attempting to install 25 H2. Screens would remain completely blank, with no display output whatsoever, no BIOS splash screen, and no response to keyboard commands. The only signs of life were fans briefly spinning up before shutting down again, blowing cold air that indicated the system was failing to initialize even basic hardware. These machines had effectively become paperweights, with expensive hardware rendered completely unusable by a software update. Some users attempted to perform clean installations of 25H2 on secondary drives, thinking a fresh install would avoid the corruption issues affecting upgrade installations. Instead, the installation process corrupted both the new target drive and their existing Windows installation on the original drive. Systems that were working perfectly before the installation attempt suddenly could not boot from any drive afterward. The situation became even more dire because of how Microsoft's own recovery system failed at exactly the moment users needed it most. On October 14, 2025, Microsoft released security update KB5066835, which inadvertently disabled USB keyboard and mouse functionality in the Windows recovery environment. Windows Recovery Environment is the diagnostic and repair toolkit that launches when Windows cannot boot normally, providing options to restore from backups, run system repairs, or uninstall problematic updates. With keyboards and mice non-functional in this environment, users facing boot failures from 25H2 found themselves in an impossible catch-22 situation. Their computers were broken by the update. They needed WinRe to fix the damage, but they could not navigate WinRe because their input devices did not work. USB devices continued functioning normally within the operating system itself, but the recovery environment where they were actually needed rendered them completely useless. Microsoft confirmed the issue and stated it prevented navigation of any recovery options within WinRe. The company released an out-of-band hotfix 6 days later, which is technical terminology for an emergency patch issued outside the normal update schedule, but for users whose systems were already corrupted and unable to boot. Waiting 6 days with a non-functional computer while unable to access repair tools represented catastrophic disruption. Even when users managed to access WinRe through alternative methods, the corruption caused by 25H2 frequently prevented the uninstallation or rollback features from working. The update had damaged system files to such an extent that the built-in recovery mechanisms could not reverse the changes. Users described running every troubleshooting command Microsoft documentation recommended, attempting system file checker scans, deployment image servicing, operations, and manual update cache clearing, only to find that nothing resolved the boot failures. The damage was too deep, too fundamental for software tools to repair. The scale of this crisis stems from how Microsoft distributes updates to home users. For most people running Windows 11 Home or Pro editions, there was no choice about installing 25H2. Microsoft's system automatically downloaded and installed the update without requiring explicit consent. The update arrived via scheduled automatic restart, often completing while users were away. By the time someone returned to find error messages or corrupted systems, the damage was done and the 10-day rollback window had often expired. Microsoft confirmed in November 2025 that home and pro devices not managed by IT departments received 25H2 automatically. Users could postpone installations for only a few weeks before the system forced installation regardless of preference. This approach stems from Microsoft's philosophy that keeping systems updated protects users from malware. But when updates themselves destroy hardware and corrupt boot drives, forced installation becomes forced damage. The hardware affected spans the entire spectrum of modern computing equipment. MSI gaming laptops, representing thousands of dollars, had integrated cameras, microphones, and location hardware permanently deleted. Systems built around AMD's Premium X 3D processors experienced RAM damage. Mainstream consumer SSDs from Western Digital and SanDisk disappeared during routine file operations. This was not limited to old hardware running unsupported configurations. These were current generation systems, often purchased within the last year, running exactly the configurations Microsoft officially supports. The message was clear: no one is safe. Regardless of how new, expensive, or well-maintained their hardware happens to be, this crisis did not emerge in isolation. 2025 has been widely described as a disaster year for Windows 11, characterized by too many bugs, too many changes, and too little user control. Microsoft has faced mounting criticism for shipping updates that introduce more problems than they solve, with insufficient testing before release. The company acknowledged that core Windows 11 features, including Start Menu, Taskbar, File Explorer, and System Settings, have been malfunctioning since July 2025 due to complications with XAML user interface components. These fundamental interface elements have been broken for months across both 24H, 2, and 25H2, affecting basic computing tasks. The delayed acknowledgement, coming only in November after months of complaints, prompted accusations of negligence and questions about whether Microsoft's quality assurance processes are sufficient. Industry observers note that Microsoft's push for feature-rich updates and rapid AI integration appears to be outpacing their testing capabilities, leading to this cascade of failures that defines the 25H2 release. The human impact of these failures is devastating. One user returned home to find their spouse's computer corrupted during automatic updates, requiring complete reinstallation and facing permanent data loss. A freelance designer watched 25H2 brick both their primary and backup drives, leaving them unable to access work programs and facing deadlines with no functioning computer. An MSI laptop owner discovered their camera, microphone, and location hardware permanently deleted, requiring motherboard replacement, potentially exceeding $1,000. Users report blank screens, no BIOS access, and hardware that will not power on after 25H2 installation, turning expensive electronics into decorative objects. For remote workers, students, and small business owners, these multi-day or multi-week outages represent direct financial loss and potential crisis. Microsoft's response has been inadequate and delayed. The company took days to acknowledge the recovery environment bug and weeks to partially address other issues. Many problems remain unresolved as of early January 2026, with users still reporting daily hardware failures. Microsoft released a hotfix for WinRE, but has not provided comprehensive solutions for boot drive corruption, hardware deletion, or SSD failures. The company continues collecting feedback while stating they found no evidence of direct causation, creating frustration as users experience catastrophic failures correlating precisely with Microsoft updates. The fundamental question remains: why does Microsoft continue forcing updates that demonstrably destroy hardware instead of focusing on stability and comprehensive testing? Windows 11.25 H2 is actively destroying millions of computers through permanent hardware deletion, catastrophic drive corruption, and boot failures. Even Microsoft's tools cannot fix. Users who trusted automatic updates now face hundreds or thousands of dollars in replacement costs and permanent data loss. The evidence from Microsoft forums, manufacturer investigations, and thousands of user reports points to one of the most severe quality control failures in Windows history. If you are running a working system, disable automatic updates immediately and create comprehensive backups. Share this information with Windows users before they desperately post to Microsoft forums asking how to recover their destroyed systems. The choice is between protecting your hardware now or trusting Microsoft will prioritize your stability over their deployment schedule. Comment on which choice you are making and subscribe to the next investigation. Your operating system does not just work for you anymore, it works for the company too. If this video helped you stay updated, tap like, share it around, and subscribe for the next big tech story.